To this now, and 95 wards across the country will hold by-elections on Wednesday. Over 440 candidates from 40 parties will take part. It's the largest number of by-elections held on a single day ever. eNCA's Govan Whittles earlier attended a briefing by the IEC, and he joins us now for details. So what is the state of readiness for Wednesday, Govan, and how exactly will they conduct these elections with COVID-19 protocols?
Yeah, well, Tilasizwe, as we've been coming out of this lockdown, we've become accustomed to what the new normal would look like. And on Wednesday, we'll find out what the new normal is for elections in South Africa. So the by-elections are being held on the same day across the country. The scale is this big because there are a number of by-elections which have had to be postponed due to the other levels of the lockdown being in effect in different parts of the country. And so the IEC has decided to do all of the outstanding by-elections on one day. That'll be Wednesday, and a total of about 601,000 people expected to go out to vote. So it's a mammoth task for the IEC, Tilasizwe. They've had to contend with items which weren't budgeted for, which they've had to buy, but also they've had to carefully research how to implement the COVID-19 safety protocols at the different voting stations, while also doing in-depth research on what kind of voter turnout they can expect and how the COVID-19 virus and the lockdown and the projected rain would affect things on that day. They're hoping for 60% voter turnout. That's, of course, 20% higher than the 40% average. But I spoke to the chairperson, or rather the CEO of the Independent Electoral Commission, Mr. Sai Mamabolo. So let's have a look at what he had to say about the state of readiness of the IEC.
Although we've had dissolved councils in the past, we've not have had to do a by-election of this scale before. So it's unprecedented in terms of the scale and the depth and the number of voters affected. We do believe that it's a welcome test, though, because it gives us a dry run for next year's election, which will probably happen still under COVID-19 conditions. So the insights, the operational insights that we will gather in this by-election will be used for better planning in respect of next year's general elections.
So running an election is, a massive undertaking at the best of times, Govan. This being done within the context of COVID-19. I understand there's a budget of a few million rand for personal protective equipment just for the by-elections. And is that just for the by-elections, or is that also for next year's municipal elections?
Now, the PPE is so expensive and so much of it is required that they can only buy for these by-elections, and they haven't indicated whether or not they'll be able to afford PPE for the next by-elections without significantly digging into their budget. And you mentioned it's a couple of million, it's 3 million rand that they've spent for PPE just for Wednesday, and that's only 95 wards across the country, so one can imagine what the bill would be once we get to the 2021 local government elections. But the entire cost of these by-elections on Wednesday would be 10 million rand, Tilasizwe. It's a big figure, but it's not uncommon for the by-elections, and the CEO indicated it's what they would have spent between March and November, but now they've decided to hold everything on one day, so it's a once-off payment. And this is important because the IEC is using money that was supposed to be used for things such as pilot projects of new technology in the voting stations, for comprehensive voter education, and they're taking that money and buying PPE with it. And they've indicated that they don't have any other choice now but to go to the National Treasury and ask them for money specifically for PPE for elections. Let's have a look at what the CEO had to say once again.
Well, it is enough for purposes of this by-election. But of course, the PPE costs had not been budgeted for when the MTF process was done a few years back. So it's going to be a cost that would have to be covered from within existing allocations. And we are really trying to get a balanced budget going, given the totality of the cuts that we announced today.
All right, Govan Whittles, live outside Elections House in Pretoria. Thank you for that update, eNCA.